Hello, and welcome to our channel, Stories with Silas. We hope you enjoy watching.
The Arab billionaire's laughter cut through Dubai's most exclusive restaurant as he mocked his elderly companion for speaking only Aramaic, a useless relic from dead civilizations. Maya's hands trembled as she opened her mouth and responded in the ancient tongue, freezing every guest mid-bite and exposing that some poverty cannot be measured in dollars. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The hush that fell over Al Khaimah, one of Dubai's most exclusive restaurants, was deafening. Waiters froze mid-step, diners set down their golden spoons, and the traditional oud player stopped his melody mid-note. All eyes turned to the corner table where an impeccably dressed billionaire laughed mockingly at his elderly companion. His booming voice cut through the air, announcing to the entire dining room that his guest only speaks Aramaic. Imagine that in this day and age. And the scholar's weathered face fell with visible shame. No one dared speak up until a young waitress with kind eyes approached their table. What happened next would forever change her life. Maya Youssef had never been the type to seek attention. She was 28, juggling long shifts at Al Khaimah, sending money back to her family in northern Iraq, and carrying the weight of being far from home in a city of towering glass and endless ambition. But this was life in Dubai, where opportunity sparkled like gold, but rarely settled among those who served it. When Maya was offered a position at Al Khaimah, a Michelin-starred establishment perched on the 45th floor of the Burj Khalifa district, she leaped at the chance despite her fears. The salary alone could support her entire village for months. Nestled in the heart of Dubai's financial district, Al Khaimah was known for its fusion of traditional Arabic cuisine with modern molecular gastronomy and an unspoken dress code that turned away even minor breaches of formality. The staff wore elegant black and gold uniforms with embroidered Arabic calligraphy, and each employee was trained to an impeccable standard. Head chef Hassan al-Rashid had once cooked for royalty in Abu Dhabi, and rumor had it that everyone from tech moguls to Hollywood stars had dined there discreetly. The pressure that came with such clientele was extraordinary, yet Maya believed the sacrifice was worth it. Each day, Maya arrived 2 hours before her shift to help set up, meticulously aligning silverware, polishing crystal glasses until they shone like diamonds under the chandeliers, and memorizing every nuance of the day's menu. She learned that timing was everything. How you walked, how you balanced multiple plates, how you spoke to each diner with just the right blend of warmth and professionalism. She was exhausted, but oddly fulfilled at the end of every shift. Something about delivering perfect service reminded her of her grandfather's teachings about serving others with dignity and grace. Within weeks, Maya found her rhythm. She charmed business executives celebrating million-dollar deals, tourist families seeking authentic luxury, and local Emiratis who appreciated her respectful demeanor. She was thrilled when her first substantial tip arrived, 500 dirhams, from a grateful couple who appreciated her knowledge of traditional Arabic coffee preparation. That money went straight into her family fund, helping pay for her younger brother's university tuition back home. Outside the restaurant, Maya's world was decidedly more modest. Her small studio apartment in Deira was a far cry from the gleaming towers she served beneath. It was a cozy space where she kept photos of her village, her grandfather's old prayer book, and recordings of him speaking Aramaic, the ancient language he had lovingly taught her as a child. "This is the language of our ancestors," he would say, his eyes bright with passion. "The language Jesus spoke. Never forget where you come from, little Maya." Despite the challenges of working long hours in a foreign country, Maya was determined to honor her grandfather's memory and provide for her family. This job at Al Khaimah felt like a step towards something meaningful. So when she clocked in that Thursday evening, She had no idea that her life and the ancient language sleeping in her heart was about to change everything. It was a busy night, reservations fully booked with what the maître d' described as very influential figures. This usually meant CEOs from the free trade zone, wealthy investors from Saudi Arabia, or perhaps even a celebrity sheikh traveling incognito. The entire staff was on high alert as rumors swirled that Khalid al-Mansouri, one of the region's most prominent tech entrepreneurs, had made a last-minute reservation. Chef Hassan fretted in the kitchen, triple-checking ingredients flown in from Lebanon and Morocco. The sous chefs prepped dishes with precision that bordered on surgical. That was the night Khalid al-Mansouri strode through the doors of Al-Qaima with an air of absolute authority. Known throughout the Gulf as a self-made billionaire who had revolutionized e-commerce in the Middle East, Khalid had amassed his fortune through a combination of brilliant innovation and ruthless business tactics. He held controlling shares in half a dozen startups and was regularly featured in Arabian business magazine. At 42, he wore his success like armor. Custom Italian suits, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people's homes, and an aura of entitlement that preceded him everywhere. Some called him a visionary, others a tyrant. Many described him as brilliant yet cold, a man who allegedly valued profit margins above human connection. But to the staff of Al-Qaima, he was simply table 12 tonight, and that was all that should matter, at least according to the restaurant's code of conduct. Maya, having studied the evening seating chart, knew he was the VIP edition, the kind who might order the 1,000-dirham royal seafood platter without blinking. She wasn't assigned to serve table 12 at first, but fate has a funny way of intervening. The restaurant buzzed like a hive on the brink of controlled chaos. Waiters circled the dining floor like choreographed dancers, swift, silent, efficient. Every seat was filled. The clink of crystal, the rustle of linen napkins, and the quiet hum of polite conversation in multiple languages intermingled with the subdued notes of traditional Arabic music. Maya's section for the night was originally tables 9, 10, and 11, none of them especially demanding. Table 9 hosted a group of European tourists admiring the view. Table 10 was occupied by a local Emirati family celebrating their daughter's engagement. Table 11 seated two Japanese businessmen discussing contracts over mezza platters. Maya had just successfully delivered a selection of appetizers, hummus topped with spiced lamb, crispy falafel, and delicate grape leaves, to each table without incident. So far, so good. Then came the unexpected turn. Layla, the senior waitress assigned to table 12, received an urgent phone call. Her mother had been rushed to the hospital. It happened so fast. The maître d' needed an immediate replacement for what would surely be the most scrutinized table of the evening. Another server had just stepped out for her break. Another was managing a difficult party of 8 in the opposite corner. His gaze landed on Maya. "Maya," he said quietly but firmly, "you'll take table 12. Mr. Al-Mansouri just arrived with a guest." Her heart quickened. She was nervous, but the unspoken rule at Al-Qaima was absolute. You never question an assignment, especially during service. She nodded, smoothed her uniform, and prepared herself to serve Khalid al-Mansouri, tech billionaire known to be as demanding as he was influential. Taking a deep breath, she approached table 12 with her tray balanced perfectly, posture aligned, expression calm and professional. Khalid al-Mansouri sat with the confidence of a man who owned not just businesses, but entire narratives. His salt and pepper beard was meticulously trimmed, his navy suit perfectly tailored, his presence commanding. But it was his companion who caught Maya's attention. An elderly man, perhaps in his 70s, with a weathered face that spoke of wisdom and hardship. He wore a simple brown jacket, outdated by Dubai standards, and his eyes held a gentle sadness that made Maya's heart ache with recognition. This man reminded her of her grandfather. Maya approached the table with practiced grace, her smile genuine but measured. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said in Arabic, her voice steady. "Welcome to Al-Khaimah. My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. May I start you with our signature drinks, or would you prefer to see our wine selection?" Khalid glanced at her briefly, his expression neutral, then returned his attention to his phone, fingers flying across the screen. The elderly man smiled at her warmly but said nothing, his hands folded neatly in his lap. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of uncertainty and quiet dignity, that reminded Maya powerfully of her grandfather when he'd visited the city before his passing. "Wine list," Khalid muttered without looking up, "and water." "Sparkling. Make it quick. We have limited time tonight." Maya nodded politely. "Of course, sir. I'll bring those right away." She turned to the elderly gentleman, offering him a kind smile. "And for you, sir?" The old man glanced at Khalid uncertainly, then back at Maya. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, he gestured gently toward Khalid, as though deferring to him. "He'll have whatever I'm having," Khalid said dismissively, still focused on his phone. "Don't bother asking him. He doesn't speak proper Arabic, barely speaks English either. Just bring 2 glasses." Maya felt a small pang of discomfort, but maintained her composure. "Very good, sir." She hurried to retrieve the wine list and water, her mind already noting the dynamic at the table. The elderly man seemed uncomfortable, almost apologetic, while Khalid exuded the casual indifference of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. When she returned with the sparkling water and wine list, she carefully poured for both guests, then offered Khalid the leather-bound menu. "We have an excellent selection tonight," she began in her most polite tone. "Our chef recommends the grilled hammer with saffron rice, or if you prefer lamb, we have a spectacular slow-roasted shoulder with—" "Stop!" Khalid interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "I don't need the full presentation. I've eaten here before." He barely glanced at the menu before making his decision. "Bring me the mixed grill platter, the royal size, extra spicy, and a side of tabbouleh, no tomatoes." Maya nodded, making mental notes. She turned to the elderly man with patient courtesy. "And what would you prefer, sir?" The old man looked at the menu, his brow furrowing as he tried to read the Arabic script. His lips moved slightly, as though sounding out words, but he remained silent. Maya noticed his hands trembling slightly as he held the menu. Khalid sighed audibly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "He can't read it properly," he announced, not bothering to lower his voice. "Just bring him the lamb kebabs." Simple. He won't know the difference anyway. Maya felt her cheeks warm with second-hand embarrassment for the elderly gentleman, whose face had turned a shade pinker. "Of course," she said softly, directing her words to the old man. "The lamb kebabs are excellent. Very tender." He nodded gratefully, though his eyes showed the sting of Khalid's words. As Maya turned to leave, Khalid called after her. "And tell the chef not to waste time on presentation. We're not here for Instagram photos. We're here to eat and leave." "Understood, sir," Maya replied, maintaining her professional demeanor even as irritation flickered in her chest. She disappeared into the kitchen, relaying the order to Chef Hassan, who raised an eyebrow at the request to skip his signature plating style, but nodded curtly. "For Al-Mansouri, we do what he asks," the chef muttered, "but it's a crime against gastronomy." As Maya waited for the dishes to be prepared, she checked on her other tables, refilling water glasses, answering questions about dessert options, ensuring everyone felt attended to. But her mind kept drifting back to table 12, to the elderly man who sat so quietly beside the boisterous billionaire, and to the strange sadness in his eyes. Something about him called to her heart, though she couldn't quite name what it was. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself with dignity despite being dismissed, or perhaps it was simply that he reminded her of home, of her grandfather, of a gentler way of being in the world. She had no idea that within the hour everything would change. While Khalid and his companion waited for their meals, the rest of Al-Khaima's dining room remained a swirl of refined activity. Waiters delicately balanced silver-domed platters, the oud players' melodic notes floated through the air, and well-dressed patrons murmured amongst themselves in a dozen different languages. Yet there was an undercurrent of tension creeping outward from table 12, like ripples spreading across still water. Maya was busy attending to her other tables. She refilled champagne for the engaged couple, answered questions about the spice levels in various dishes for the European tourists, and politely checked if the Japanese businessman needed anything else. Despite juggling multiple requests, she couldn't escape a growing sense of unease. She would have to return to table 12 soon, and something in her gut told her the evening would not go smoothly. When Chef Hassan rang the bell indicating that table 12's dishes were ready, Maya quickly gathered the plates with practiced efficiency. The mixed grill platter was a masterpiece, despite Khalid's instructions, perfectly charred meats arranged with artistic restraint. The lamb kebabs glistened with herbs and olive oil, tender and aromatic. Beside them sat the tabbouleh, bright green with parsley, and a selection of fresh flatbread still warm from the tandoor. Maya emerged from the kitchen and made her way through the tables, head held high, balancing the heavy tray with the ease of long practice. As she arrived at table 12, she gently placed the mixed grill before Khalid, then set down the lamb kebabs in front of the elderly gentleman. "I hope you enjoy your meal," she said softly, stepping back to maintain the polite distance required. For a few minutes both men began to eat. Khalid attacked his food with the efficiency of someone checking items off a to-do list, barely pausing between bites. The elderly scholar, however, ate slowly, carefully, savoring each taste, as though meals like this were rare treasures in his life. Maya watched from a respectful distance, ready to attend to any requests. She noticed the old man's hands, gnarled with age but gentle in their movements. He reminded her so much of her grandfather that her throat tightened with unexpected emotion. Then, without warning, Khalid's expression shifted. He set down his fork with deliberate force, leaned back in his chair, and gestured broadly toward his companion. His voice rose, not quite shouting, but loud enough to carry across several nearby tables. "You know what's remarkable?" Khalid announced to no one in particular, a smirk playing at his lips. "My friend here is a scholar, supposedly very learned, very educated." He paused for dramatic effect, but he only speaks Aramaic. Can you imagine? In this day and age, in a city like Dubai, surrounded by the modern world, and he only speaks Aramaic. He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that cut through the gentle ambience of the restaurant like a blade. Several nearby diners turned to look. Some exchanged uncomfortable glances, others pretended not to notice but were clearly listening. The elderly scholar's face flushed deeply. His eyes, which had been warm and gentle moments before, now filled with shame and hurt. He set down his fork, his appetite clearly vanished, and looked down at his plate as though wishing he could disappear into it. Khalid continued, warming to his audience. "I brought him here thinking he could at least manage Arabic or English, but no, just Aramaic. The language of ancient texts and dead civilizations. What use is that in the real world?" He gestured around the restaurant. "We're closing billion-dirham deals in this city, building the future, and he's stuck speaking a language that hasn't been relevant for 2,000 years. A hush fell over the immediate area. The oud player's fingers stumbled over a note, then recovered. Waiters slowed their movements, unsure whether to intervene or maintain professional distance. Even the maitre d', standing near the entrance, noticed the commotion and started moving toward the table. Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding. She could see the elderly man's shoulders hunching, his hands trembling slightly as they gripped the edge of the table. Every word from Khalid's mouth was like a public lashing, stripping away the old scholar's dignity layer by layer. Something inside Maya shifted, a memory surfacing like a lifeline thrown across time. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "This is the language of our ancestors, the language Jesus spoke." "Never forget where you come from, little Maya." She thought of all the hours he'd spent teaching her, the patient way he'd corrected her pronunciation, the pride in his eyes when she could finally recite the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. She thought of how he'd made her promise to never let the language die, to carry it forward as a sacred trust. And now, here before her, sat a man being humiliated for honoring that very same heritage. Maya's hands clenched at her sides. Her careful composure began to crack. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Khalid was still smirking, clearly pleased with himself, apparently expecting agreement or perhaps nervous laughter from those around him. The elderly scholar sat perfectly still, his weathered face a mask of quiet suffering. Maya felt something inside her snap, not in anger, but in clarity. She had spent years turning the other cheek, accepting dismissive treatment from demanding customers, swallowing her pride to keep her job and send money home. She had learned to be invisible, to serve without being seen, to accept that her role was to facilitate the comfort of others while suppressing her own voice. But in this moment, watching this gentle old man being publicly humiliated for honoring the very heritage her grandfather had died protecting, something fundamental shifted in her heart. She stepped forward. Her hands were trembling, but her voice, when it came, was steady. She moved to the elderly scholar's side of the table and did something she had never done in all her months at Al-Qaima. She spoke without being addressed first, and she spoke in a language no one expected. "Shlama Luch, Baba," Maya said softly in Aramaic. "Peace be upon you, Father." The effect was instantaneous and profound. The elderly scholar's head snapped up, his eyes widening in absolute shock. Khalid's smirk froze on his face. The nearby tables fell completely silent. Even the oud player stopped mid-phrase, his instrument suddenly mute. Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, the ancient syllables flowing from her tongue like water from a long-sealed well. "Mana sabe at, ana asdelach, kulmad bae at." "What would you like? I can help you with anything you need." Tears instantly filled the old scholar's eyes. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first, only a strangled gasp of disbelief and overwhelming emotion. Then, slowly, reverently, he responded in the same ancient tongue. Anti Mamla Aramaya?" His voice shook. You speak Aramaic?" "En, Baba," Maya replied, feeling her own eyes begin to well up. "Abi dabi alefli, hu amarlidla neshkach men aika atena." "Yes, Father. My grandfather taught me. He told me never to forget where we come from." The elderly man reached out with a trembling hand and grasped hers. Tears streamed down his weathered cheeks freely now. He spoke again in Aramaic, his voice breaking with emotion. "Berich at Barti, Berich Avenue Analam Selideshma Eshma Baraiti, Haleshana Chaya Bapuma Datali Taktan Shafirta." "Blessed are you, my daughter. Blessed are you. I never hoped to hear our language alive again in the mouth of such a beautiful young woman." Maya squeezed his hand gently, her own tears now flowing. "Leshana Dieshua Meshika," she said softly. "The language of Jesus Christ." "En," he whispered. "En. Yes. Yes." The restaurant had become a cathedral of silence. Every person within earshot sat transfixed by what they were witnessing, not just a conversation in an ancient language, but a profound moment of human connection that transcended wealth, status, and modernity itself. Khalid al-Mansuri sat frozen in his chair, His expression transformed from smug superiority to utter bewilderment. His mouth hung slightly open. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he appeared to have absolutely no idea what to do or say. The maitre d' stood near the entrance, his hand pressed to his chest, visibly moved. Several women at nearby tables had tears in their eyes. The European tourists were filming on their phones, capturing something they knew was extraordinary, even if they didn't understand the words. Maya turned to Khalid, still holding the elderly scholar's hand. When she spoke now, she switched back to Arabic, but her voice carried a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. "Sir," she said, looking Khalid directly in the eyes for the first time, "this man speaks the language of prophets and saints, the language that was spoken when this region gave birth to civilization itself. There is no shame in honoring the ancient, only in forgetting it." Khalid's face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment, anger, or something else entirely, it was impossible to tell. The elderly scholar spoke again in Aramaic, and Maya translated for the room. "He says his name is Dr. Samuel Yonan. He is a professor of ancient languages at the University of Chicago. He has spent 40 years preserving Aramaic texts and teaching the language to new generations." A wave of murmurs rippled through the dining room. The revelation that the simple old man, who spoke only Aramaic, was actually a distinguished professor from one of America's most prestigious universities, hung in the air like incense. Several diners whispered to each other, shaking their heads at Khalid's presumption. Khalid's jaw tightened. His fingers gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. He had been thoroughly, publicly embarrassed, not by someone of equal wealth or status, but by a waitress. And worse, his own guest, whom he had mocked as backward and irrelevant, had been revealed as an accomplished scholar. I didn't mean," Khalid began, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "I was simply making an observation about practicality in the modern business world." Dr. Yonan looked at him with sad, knowing eyes. He spoke in Aramaic, and Maya translated, her voice carrying across the now silent restaurant. "He says that you invited him to Dubai to consult on ancient manuscripts your company acquired, texts written in Aramaic that no one else could authenticate. He came here at your request because you needed his expertise in this irrelevant language." The irony was not lost on anyone. A businessman at a nearby table let out a short, incredulous laugh before covering his mouth. The engaged Emirati couple exchanged meaningful glances. Even the waitstaff, still hovering at a respectful distance, couldn't hide their reactions. Khalid's face had gone from red to pale. "Dr. Yonan, I apologize if my words were misunderstood." The elderly professor held up a gentle hand and spoke again in Aramaic. Maya translated, though tears continued to stream down her cheeks. "He says there is no misunderstanding. He says that you are brilliant in business, but have forgotten that wisdom and wealth are not the same thing. He forgives you because holding anger serves no one, but he asks that you remember this moment." The simplicity and grace of the old man's response seemed to strike Khalid harder than any angry retort could have. He sat back in his chair, looking smaller somehow, his expensive suit and watch suddenly seeming like hollow decorations rather than markers of substance. Then something unexpected happened. An older Emirati gentleman from table 15 stood up, applause echoing from his hands. Others quickly joined. The engaged couple, the European tourists, the Japanese businessman. Within moments, nearly the entire restaurant was on its feet, clapping not just for Maya, but for the dignity of tradition, for the beauty of ancient heritage honored in a hyper-modern city. Dr. Yonan stood slowly, his legs unsteady, and Maya quickly moved to support his elbow. He turned to her and spoke softly in Aramaic, just for her. "Abuch yitberach b'shmaya, at amrat le kala rabba." Your grandfather is blessed in heaven. You have made him very proud. Maya couldn't hold back her sobs any longer. She pressed the professor's hand to her forehead in a gesture of respect her grandfather had taught her, a traditional blessing. Mordena Rabba Baba, she whispered. Thank you, father. The maitre d' approached the table, his expression a mixture of concern and admiration. He looked at Maya with newfound respect, then at Khalid, whose discomfort was palpable. Mr. Al-Mansouri, the maitre d' said carefully, I trust everything has been satisfactory this evening. Khalid opened his mouth, closed it, then finally found words. Yes. Thank you. His voice was hollow. He pulled out his wallet and extracted several bills, far more than the meal cost, and placed them on the table. Dr. Yonan, I believe we should continue our conversation another time, when I can listen more carefully. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was as close as a man like Khalid al-Mansouri probably came to admitting he was wrong. Dr. Yonan nodded graciously. Ana amsa mabuka luk. I will wait for your call. Khalid stood, straightened his suit jacket, and walked toward the exit with what remained of his dignity. As he passed Maya, he paused for just a moment, his expression unreadable, then continued without a word. The applause had faded, but the atmosphere in Al-Khaimah had fundamentally changed. Other diners approached table 12 to meet Dr. Yonan and thank Maya. Several slipped her generous tips with whispered words of gratitude for what she'd done. After the last well-wishers had returned to their tables and Dr. Yonan had been escorted to a car arranged by the restaurant, Maya found herself standing alone in the private staff corridor, her entire body trembling from the adrenaline that had sustained her through the encounter. The weight of what had just happened crashed over her like a wave. Had she really just done that, spoken out of turn to a billionaire guest, intervened in a situation that wasn't her business? She'd broken nearly every rule in the service industry handbook. She might have just destroyed her career in Dubai's competitive restaurant scene, yet even as fear gnawed at her stomach, a different feeling glowed in her chest, a fierce, unshakable pride. She had honored her grandfather's memory. She had stood up for someone who couldn't defend himself. She had reminded everyone in that dining room, including herself, that some things matter more than money or status. Maya! The voice was gentle but firm. She turned to find Chef Hassan standing in the corridor, his tall white toque slightly askew, his expression unreadable. Her heart sank. This was it, the moment she'd be fired. Chef, I'm sorry, she began quickly. I know I overstepped. I know I should have maintained professional distance. I just couldn't stand there and watch him humiliate that old man like that. My grandfather... Chef Hassan raised a hand, stopping her. Then, to her absolute shock, he smiled, a genuine, warm smile she'd never seen him wear before. Maya, he said, stepping closer, in 20 years of running kitchens across 3 continents, I have never been more proud of someone on my staff. His eyes glistened slightly. What you did tonight reminded every person in that dining room what hospitality truly means. It's not about expensive ingredients or perfect plating. It's about human dignity. Maya felt tears spilling down her cheeks again. I thought you'd fire me. Fire you? Chef Hassan laughed, a deep, genuine sound. Maya, do you know what's happening right now? Our phone is ringing off the hook. The video is already online. Someone filmed it and posted it. You're trending across the Emirates, and every single comment I've seen so far is praising you, praising Al-Khaimah for employing someone with such integrity. He paused, his expression growing more serious. The owners want to meet with you tomorrow, not to reprimand you, to thank you, and to discuss your future here. Maya could barely process his words. My future? Things are going to change for you after tonight, Maya. I want you to be ready for that. But first... He gestured toward the staff room. Go sit down. Breathe! The other servers will cover your remaining tables. You've done more than enough tonight. As Chef Hassan returned to his kitchen, Maya made her way to the small staff break room. She collapsed onto the worn couch, her mind spinning. Through the walls, she could hear the resumed hum of the restaurant, conversations, laughter, the clink of dishes. Life continuing as normal, even though nothing felt normal anymore. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother in Iraq. "Everyone in the village is calling. They say you're famous. What happened?" Then another from her brother. "You're on Al Jazeera's social media. Did you really speak Aramaic to that professor?" Maya stared at the messages, overwhelmed. Her private moment of defending her heritage had somehow become public inspiration. She thought of her grandfather, of his patient lessons in their small village courtyard, of his insistence that the ancient language must never die. "Jedi," she whispered to the empty room, using the Arabic word for grandfather. "I hope I made you proud." As if in answer, a profound peace settled over her, a certainty that transcended her fears about consequences or career. She had done the right thing. She had honored her ancestors. And somehow, miraculously, the world had witnessed it and responded with recognition rather than rebuke. The door opened, and Mariam, a fellow waitress, peeked in. "Maya, there's someone outside asking for you, an elderly gentleman." He came back. Maya's heart leaped. "Dr. Yonan? He says he couldn't leave without properly thanking you." Maya stood, wiped her tears, and straightened her uniform. Whatever came next, tomorrow's meeting with owners, viral fame, or the uncertain future Chef Hassan had alluded to, she would face it the same way she'd faced tonight's challenge, with truth, with dignity, and with the memory of her grandfather guiding her steps. Maya walked through the restaurant's elegant foyer, past the gleaming reception desk, and into the cool Dubai night air. There, standing beneath the building's softly lit entrance, was Dr. Samuel Yonan. He had changed into a simple cardigan over his shirt, looking more comfortable now, more himself. His eyes brightened the moment he saw her. "Shlama Barti," he said warmly. "Peace, my daughter." "Shlama Baba," Maya replied, moving to stand before him. "You didn't need to come back. I was just doing what felt right." Dr. Yonan smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "That is precisely why I had to come back," he said, speaking in Aramaic, the language that now felt like a secret garden they alone could enter. "Because you did what felt right when no one would have blamed you for remaining silent. Do you know how rare that is?" Maya shook her head, emotion rising in her throat again. "Let me tell you something," Dr. Yonan continued, his voice taking on the cadence of a professor who had spent decades teaching. "I have traveled the world, documenting Aramaic speakers. I have visited villages in Syria where only 12 people still speak it. I have recorded grandmothers in Turkey whispering prayers their children no longer understand. I have sat with monks in ancient monasteries copying manuscripts no one will ever read." He paused, his eyes glistening in the streetlight. "But tonight, in this city of glass towers and impossible luxury, in a place where everything is new and nothing remembers the old, tonight I heard our language spoken with love by someone who was never required to learn it, someone who chose to carry it forward. My grandfather," Maya said softly. "He made me promise. He said it was a trust passed down through generations, and I was not to let it end with me." "What was his name?" Dr. Yonan asked. "Yonan, like yours. Yonan Marcus." The professor's eyes widened. "From which village?" "Al-Kosh, in northern Iraq." Dr. Yonan's hand flew to his chest. "Al-Kosh? My grandmother's cousin married into the Marcus family of Al-Kosh. Maya," he gripped her shoulders gently, "we may be distant relatives. The Aramaic-speaking community is small. We are all connected threads in the same ancient tapestry. Maya felt dizzy with the revelation. Here, thousands of miles from her village, she had found not just someone who spoke her grandfather's language, but possibly someone who shared her blood. "He would have loved to know that," she whispered. "He died 3 years ago. I never got to tell him properly how much his lessons meant to me." Dr. Yonan squeezed her shoulders. "He knows. Trust me, Bhati, he knows. And what you did tonight, that was your message to him across the veil between worlds. You told him his life's work was not in vain." They stood in silence for a moment, two souls connected by syllables older than the city surrounding them. "I want to ask you something," Dr. Yonan said finally, "and please feel free to refuse. But I run a program at the University of Chicago, an archive and teaching initiative for endangered languages. We document speakers, create learning materials, train new teachers. We have people working on Cherokee, Navajo, Gaelic, dozens of languages on the edge of extinction." He paused, searching her face. "We have been trying to expand our Aramaic program, but we need native speakers, people who learned it naturally, who can teach it with heart, not just grammar. Would you ever consider being part of that work?" Maya's mind reeled. I'm just a waitress. I don't have a degree in linguistics or—" "You have something better," Dr. Yonan interrupted gently. "You have a living connection to the language. You learned it from someone who loved it. That cannot be taught in any classroom." He pulled a business card from his pocket. "I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm not even asking you to uproot your life immediately. But if you're interested, we could start with remote work, recording lessons, translating materials, connecting with other speakers online. We would compensate you fairly." Maya took the card with trembling fingers, the embossed letters catching the light. Dr. Samuel Yonan, Director, Endangered Languages Initiative. "Think about it," he said kindly, "and know that whatever you decide, you have already done more for Aramaic tonight than most people do in a lifetime." The next morning, Maya arrived at Al-Khaimah an hour before the scheduled meeting with the owners, her stomach churning with nervous anticipation. The restaurant was closed for business, but the lights were on, and she could see movement through the windows. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the doors. Inside, she found not just the owners, but also Chef Hassan, the maitre d', and several senior staff members gathered around a table laden with coffee and pastries. As she entered, they all turned to look at her and began applauding. Maya froze, overwhelmed. What's happening?" Amira Al-Zarani, the restaurant's owner, stood and approached with a warm smile. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, dressed in a designer abaya with subtle embroidery. "Maya, please sit. We have much to discuss." As Maya took a seat, Amira gestured to a tablet on the table, displaying social media feeds. "Do you know how many views your video has?" Maya shook her head mutely. 4 million across all platforms, and climbing. Amira's smile widened. "The comments are extraordinary. People are calling you a hero. They're praising Al-Khaimah for creating an environment where staff feel empowered to stand up for dignity and respect. Our reservation list has doubled. We've received interview requests from CNN, Al Arabiya, BBC Arabic." "I never meant for it to become such a big thing," Maya said quietly. "I just couldn't watch him humiliate that elderly man." "Exactly," Amira said, leaning forward. "You acted from the heart, not from calculation. That authenticity is what resonates with people. In a region where hospitality is sacred tradition, you reminded everyone what that tradition truly means." She paused, exchanging glances with her business partners. "Maya, we want to offer you a new position. We're creating a role called Cultural Ambassador. You would work with our staff on sensitivity training, help us develop programs that honor the diverse heritage of our guests, and represent Al-Khaimah at cultural events. The salary would be 3 times what you currently earn. Maya's eyes widened. 3 times? You've become the face of our brand's values, Amira explained. And beyond the practical benefits to the restaurant, we genuinely believe you have something important to teach all of us about respect, heritage, and human dignity. Maya's mind raced. This opportunity was extraordinary. Financial security she'd never imagined. The ability to send more money home, perhaps even bring her mother to Dubai for visits. But there was also Dr. Yonan's card in her purse, representing a different path, one that connected directly to her grandfather's legacy. "May I ask for time to consider?" Maya said carefully. "There's another opportunity I need to think about as well." Amira nodded graciously. "Of course, we're not asking for an immediate answer. Take a week. Think about what you truly want." As the meeting concluded and Maya prepared to leave, the maitre d' approached her quietly. "There's someone waiting to see you outside," he said. "Mr. Al-Mansouri." Maya's heart skipped. "Khalid. He's been waiting for an hour. He says it's important." With trepidation, Maya walked outside into the warm Dubai morning. Khalid stood by a modest sedan, not his usual luxury vehicle, dressed in a simple kandura rather than his expensive suits. He looked tired, humbled, and somehow more human than he had 2 nights before. "Miss Youssef," he said, his voice lacking all traces of arrogance, "thank you for seeing me. I know I have no right to your time after how I behaved." Maya said nothing, waiting. "I've spent the last day doing a lot of thinking," Khalid continued, "and answering a lot of very difficult questions from my mother, who called me a disgrace to our traditions." He smiled ruefully. She was right. "I became so focused on building an empire that I forgot the values I was raised with." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I've made a donation to Dr. Yonan's Endangered Languages Initiative, a substantial one. It won't undo what I said, but perhaps it can help preserve the heritage I mocked." He extended the envelope to Maya. "And this is for you. Not as payment or apology, you can't buy your way out of shame, but as a gesture of respect and support for whatever path you choose." Maya accepted the envelope, looking Khalid in the eye. She saw genuine contrition there and growth. "Thank you," she said simply, "for having the courage to face what you did." 3 months later, Maya stood in a small television studio in Dubai, preparing for her first interview as the newly appointed cultural heritage consultant for Al Khaimah Restaurant Group, a hybrid role she had helped design herself. 3 days a week, she worked with the restaurant on cultural sensitivity and heritage programming. The other days, she recorded lessons and materials for Dr. Yonan's Endangered Languages Initiative, teaching Aramaic to students around the world via video conference. It was the best of both worlds, and it had all started with one moment of courage. The interviewer, a kind woman from Al Arabiya, smiled at her. "So Maya, your story has inspired millions, but I think many people wonder what gave you the strength to speak up when no one else would." Maya thought of her grandfather, of his patient voice teaching her ancient words in their village courtyard. She thought of Dr. Yonan's tears when he heard his native language spoken with love. She thought of Khalid's transformation from arrogant billionaire to humbled student of his own heritage. "I think," Maya said slowly, "we all carry languages inside us. Not just words, but values, respect, dignity, compassion. My grandfather taught me that some things are worth more than comfort or security. When I saw Dr. Yonan being humiliated for honoring his heritage, I had to speak the language my grandfather taught me, not just Aramaic, but the language of standing up for what's right." The interviewer nodded, visibly moved. "And what about Mr. Al-Mansouri? We understand you've maintained contact with him." Maya smiled. "Khalid has become a student of Aramaic himself. He's learning the language of the manuscripts he collects. Last week, he spoke 3 sentences to Dr. Yonan in Aramaic. It took him a month to memorize them, but the pride in his eyes reminded me that we're all capable of growth when we're willing to humble ourselves. After the interview, Maya returned to her apartment, larger now in a better neighborhood, but still decorated with photos of her village and her grandfather's prayer book displayed prominently on a shelf. Her phone buzzed with a video call. She answered to see Dr. Yonan's smiling face. "Shlama Bhati," he said warmly. "Shlama Baba," she replied, her heart full. "I have news," Dr. Yonan said, his eyes twinkling. "Our program has received funding to establish a new archive center, and the board has unanimously voted to name it the Yonan Marcus Memorial Archive in honor of your grandfather." Maya's hand flew to her mouth, tears instant. "Truly, truly, his dedication to passing on the language will now be recognized forever. And Maya," Dr. Yonan's voice grew thick with emotion, "I found documentation. We are indeed related. Your grandfather's great-grandmother and my grandfather were cousins. We are family." Maya wept openly, feeling the connection across time and space, from ancient Mesopotamia to modern Dubai, from her grandfather's voice to this moment of recognition. "He would have loved knowing that," she whispered. "He does know," Dr. Yonan said gently. "Wherever he is, he knows. And he is proud beyond measure." That evening, Maya sat on her balcony overlooking Dubai's glittering skyline. She opened her grandfather's prayer book and read aloud in Aramaic, the ancient words floating out over a modern city, a bridge between worlds. She thought about that night at Al-Khaimah, about Khalid's mockery turning into a moment of awakening, about how one sentence in an ancient language had changed multiple lives. She had spoken the truth, that dignity cannot be bought, that heritage matters, that every human deserves respect. And the world had listened.